The most dangerous man in New York wasn't the one who made me raise my hand that night. It was the one who made me regret nothing after I did. The ballroom went silent so fast it felt like someone had stolen the air. 1 second there had been laughter, clinking champagne glasses, and a string quartet playing somewhere beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers. The next, there was nothing, just silence. And me, standing in the center of the Grand Regent Hotel ballroom with my heart hammering against my ribs and my hands still hanging in the air. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me. Wealthy donors, politicians, business executives, women in designer gowns, men in tailored tuxedos. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because the man standing 3 feet away from me was Adrian Moretti, and I had just slapped him. The sharp sound still echoed inside my head. Not because it was loud, because it should never have happened. Not to him. Adrian Moretti wasn't just rich. Rich men attended galas. Rich men bought tables and donated money. Adrian owned the building hosting the event. He owned half the city if the rumors were true. People lowered their voices when they spoke his name. Security guards straightened when he entered a room. Powerful people acted nervous around him. And somehow, despite all of that, despite every instinct screaming at me to stay quiet and keep my job, I had done the one thing nobody expected. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 26 years old. I teach 3rd grade in Brooklyn. 3 nights a week, I worked private events to help pay for my mother's medical bills. That night was supposed to be simple. Serve drinks. Smile politely. Go home with enough tips to cover another prescription refill. Instead, I found myself staring directly into the icy blue eyes of the most feared man in the room. His expression revealed nothing. That was somehow worse than anger. Around us, several men in dark suits shifted uneasily. One took a small step forward before stopping. Every person in the ballroom seemed to be waiting for Adrian to react, waiting for consequences, waiting for me to disappear. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it. But beneath the fear was something stronger. The same stubborn fire that had carried me through years of struggle. Because 30 minutes earlier, Adrian Moretti had looked at me like I was a liar, like I was a thief, like I was less than human. And that hurt far more than fear ever could. A crystal chandelier scattered gold light across the marble floor between us. Somewhere near the back of the room, someone dropped a fork. The tiny metallic sound felt deafening. Adrian's gaze never left mine. I expected fury. I expected humiliation. I expected security to escort me out. Instead, something unreadable flickered behind those cold eyes. Curiosity, just for a second. Then he took one slow step closer. The room seemed to lean forward with him. My breath caught. His voice, when it finally came, was calm enough to freeze the entire ballroom all over again. What's your name? My mouth went dry. Of all the things I expected Adrian Moretti to say, that was not one of them. Not anger. Not threats. Not demands. Just 4 simple words. What is your name? The question hung in the air while every person in the ballroom waited for something far worse. I swallowed hard. Emily. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. Emily Carter. Adrian studied me for several long seconds. His expression remained unreadable, but I could feel hundreds of eyes shifting between us. Somewhere behind him, one of his associates adjusted his tie nervously. Another glanced toward the exits as if preparing for disaster. None of them seemed to understand what was happening. The truth was, neither did I. Adrian slowly nodded. Emily Carter. Hearing him repeat my name sent an unexpected chill through me. Not because he sounded threatening, because he sounded thoughtful. That frightened me more. He glanced toward the crowd surrounding us. Everyone returned to your evening. Nobody moved. The ballroom remained frozen. Then Adrian lifted a single finger. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable. Yet within seconds conversations awkwardly resumed. Music started again. Glasses clinked. Waiters continued moving through the room. It was like watching a giant machine restart after someone had pressed a hidden switch. I stood there, completely stunned. The world had started moving again, but I felt trapped in place. Adrian's attention returned to me. Walk with me. It was not exactly an order. It was not exactly a request either. Every survival instinct I possessed told me to refuse. Unfortunately, common sense reminded me that refusing Adrian Moretti in front of 300 guests might be an even worse idea. He turned and began walking toward a quieter corridor near the ballroom entrance. To my surprise, he did not touch my arm. He did not signal security. He simply expected me to follow. And somehow I did. The noise of the gala faded behind us. Soft music became distant. The scent of expensive perfume and champagne gave way to polished wood and fresh flowers lining the hallway. Adrian stopped beside a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Manhattan. Rain streaked across the glass. The city lights below looked blurred and distant. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "Why did you do it?" I crossed my arms. My hands were still shaking. "You accused me." "I did not accuse you." I laughed before I could stop myself. The sound came out sharper than intended. "Your head of security publicly searched my bag in front of everyone." His jaw tightened slightly. "That is not the same thing." It felt the same to me. Silence followed. Adrian looked out at the city below. "You were angry. You would be too." Another pause. I expected him to argue. Instead, he surprised me again. "Perhaps." The answer caught me off guard. Powerful men were not supposed to admit things like that, especially men with reputations like his. I stared at him, trying to understand what kind of person stood behind all the rumors. The billionaire. The businessman. The man everyone feared. None of those stories matched the person standing beside me now. Then Adrian spoke again, his voice quieter. "You are the first person who has ever done that. I am not sure whether that is impressive or terrifying." To my shock, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Not quite a smile. Something close. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Whatever he read caused the faint trace of amusement to disappear instantly. His eyes hardened. The temperature of the conversation seemed to change. Adrian looked back at me. "Emily, there is something you need to know." For the first time that night, I saw genuine concern in his face. And suddenly I wished I had never come to the gala at all. My stomach tightened the moment Adrian said those words. "There is something you need to know." Rain continued sliding down the glass behind him, turning the city into a blur of white and gold lights. I stared at him, waiting. Instead of answering immediately, he looked toward the ballroom doors. His expression had become distant, calculating, like he was putting together pieces of a puzzle only he could see. That was when everything rushed back. The reason I was standing here. The reason my hand had connected with the face of the most powerful man in the room. 30 minutes earlier, I had been carrying a tray of sparkling water through the gala. The evening had felt endless. My feet hurt. My smile hurt. I was already calculating how many hours of tutoring I would need next month to cover my mother's physical therapy sessions. Then a voice cut through the crowd. "Stop her." I froze. Every conversation nearby seemed to pause. 2 security guards were moving directly toward me. At first I thought there had been a mistake. Then one of them reached for the tray in my hands. "Miss, we need to see your bag." Confusion quickly turned into embarrassment. Guests began staring. A woman wearing diamonds larger than grapes openly pointed in my direction. "What happened?" someone whispered. "Something was stolen," another voice answered. Heat rushed into my face. "There has to be a misunderstanding." The guard remained polite but firm. "A valuable watch is missing." Around us, more people started watching. The ballroom suddenly felt smaller, louder, suffocating. I handed over my bag because I had nothing to hide. My wallet, my lesson plans, a half-eaten granola bar, a bottle of headache medicine. Everything was placed on a nearby table while strangers watched. Nobody found a watch. Nobody found anything. But the damage had already been done. People were staring at me differently now. Not like a waitress. Like a suspect. Like a problem. Then I saw him. Adrian Moretti. Standing near the center of the ballroom, surrounded by executives and donors. Calm. Untouchable. Powerful. His attention settled on me for only a moment, but it felt like a spotlight. I remember the humiliation more than anything else. The feeling of being judged before anyone knew the truth. The feeling of standing completely alone while wealthy strangers quietly decided what kind of person I was. "You can go," one guard finally said. Just like that. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement that I had been publicly embarrassed in front of hundreds of people. Something inside me snapped. Not because I was innocent. Because nobody seemed to care that I was innocent. Then Adrian approached. The crowd immediately parted for him. He looked at the security chief. "Handle it." 3 simple words. Maybe he meant the missing watch. Maybe he meant the situation. I never found out. At that moment, all I heard was a man with unlimited power dismissing me like I did not matter. The next few seconds happened faster than thought. Faster than fear. Faster than common sense. And now, standing beside that rain-covered window, I realized something terrifying. Adrian was looking at me as if he had finally discovered that same truth. I had never been the problem, which meant someone else was. The concern in Adrian's eyes vanished almost as quickly as I noticed it. He pulled out his phone again, read another message, and his jaw tightened. The hallway suddenly felt colder. Not because of the air conditioning, because I could sense something shifting beneath the surface of the evening. Something bigger than a missing watch. "What is it?" I asked. Adrian slipped the phone back into his pocket. "The watch has been found." For a second I just stared at him. "Found?" He nodded once. "In the office of one of the event coordinators." The words hit me harder than I expected. Relief should have come first. Instead, anger arrived. Hot and immediate. "That is it?" I asked. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. A woman gets publicly searched in front of 300 people. Everyone watches. Everyone assumes the worst. Then 30 minutes later somebody finds the watch and life goes on. The muscles in his jaw moved. He did not answer. "Do you know what that feels like?" I continued. "No one remembers being innocent. They only remember being accused." Rain tapped softly against the glass beside us. The city lights reflected across Adrian's face. For the first time since meeting him, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Not angry. Not annoyed. Uncomfortable. "You are right," he said quietly. The admission surprised me enough to stop talking. Powerful men were not supposed to say those words. Not in movies. Not in real life. Especially not men like Adrian Moretti. "That does not change what happened," I replied. "No." His voice remained calm. "It does not." We stood in silence for several seconds. Somewhere inside the ballroom, laughter drifted through the partially opened doors. The gala was continuing as if none of this had happened. As if my entire night had not been turned upside down. Adrian looked toward the crowd. His expression became distant again. Analytical. "Something about this does not make sense." I crossed my arms. "The watch was stolen and recovered." Sounds simple to me. "Nothing about tonight has been simple." His answer came immediately. Too immediately. That was when I noticed it. The way his attention kept drifting toward specific people in the ballroom. The way several men in expensive suits seemed nervous whenever they thought nobody was watching. The way Adrian appeared to be studying the room instead of enjoying the event. "You think somebody set this up?" I asked. His gaze shifted back to mine. For a moment, I thought he might ignore the question. Then he surprised me again. "Possibly." A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Until now, I had viewed the missing watch as a personal humiliation. An awful misunderstanding. Nothing more. But the look in Adrian's eyes suggested he was seeing something much larger. Something hidden beneath the surface. Before I could ask another question, a man in a dark suit approached quickly from the ballroom. He stopped several feet away. "Sir." Adrian turned. The man lowered his voice, but I still caught a few words. "We found additional footage." Adrian's expression changed instantly. Every trace of calm disappeared. He glanced at me, then back at the man, then at me again. "Emily," he said carefully, "I need you to leave the gala tonight." My heartbeat stumbled. "Why?" Adrian held my gaze for a long moment. "Because whoever framed you may not be finished yet." The words followed me all the way to the employee entrance. Whoever framed you may not be finished yet. Rain had intensified by the time I stepped outside. Cold drops tapped against the black umbrella one of the hotel managers insisted I take. The city smelled like wet pavement and exhaust. Yellow taxi lights blurred across the street. Everything looked normal. That was what made it unsettling. I pulled my coat tighter and started toward the subway station 2 blocks away. Part of me wanted to laugh at Adrian's warning. Another part could not forget the expression on his face when he said it. He had not sounded dramatic. He had sounded certain. My phone buzzed. "Mom." I answered immediately. "Hey." Her voice sounded tired but warm. "Are you finished working?" The knot in my chest loosened slightly. "Almost home. Do not forget we have the physical therapy appointment tomorrow at 10. "I know." "And Emily?" "Yeah. Try to get some sleep tonight." I smiled despite everything. "I will." After we hung up, I stood beneath the awning of a closed pharmacy and watched the rain. My mother always worried about me. She did not know how close we were to losing the apartment some months. She did not know how many extra shifts I worked. She definitely did not know I'd spent the evening arguing with one of the most powerful men in New York. Some things were easier left unsaid. The subway ride to Brooklyn was nearly empty. I sat beside the window and watched dark tunnels flash by. Across from me, a teenager slept with headphones around his neck. A woman read a paperback novel beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. I envied them. When I finally reached my neighborhood, it was almost midnight. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The familiar brick buildings and corner delis felt comforting after the glittering world of the gala. This was real life. This was where I belonged. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment and unlocked the door quietly. The smell of lavender tea drifted from the kitchen. Mom had left the light on again. I found her asleep on the couch beneath a blanket. A medical journal rested open in her lap. The sight made my chest ache. She looked smaller these days, more fragile. I gently moved the journal aside and covered her shoulders. Then I sat beside the window and stared out at the rain-speckled street below. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I opened the message. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a single photograph. My breath caught. It was a picture of me leaving the hotel less than 30 minutes earlier, standing beneath the umbrella, completely unaware someone had been watching. Beneath the image were 7 simple words. You should have listened and stayed quiet. The blood drained from my face. I read the message twice, 3 times. Then I noticed something else. A second notification appeared before I could react. Different number, different sender. Only 4 words this time. Call me immediately. Adrian Moretti. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped the phone. The anonymous message sat on the screen like a weight pressing against my chest. You should have listened and stayed quiet. Then beneath it, the second message. Call me immediately. Adrian Moretti. For several seconds, I simply stared at the screen. The apartment was silent except for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock and the distant sound of rain against the windows. My mother remained asleep on the couch, completely unaware that my ordinary life had somehow become tangled with secrets I did not understand. I looked at the photograph again. Whoever took it had been close. Close enough to capture details. The umbrella. The hotel entrance. The exact moment I stepped onto the sidewalk. The realization made my stomach tighten. Someone had been watching me before I ever reached the subway. I pressed the call button. The line connected immediately. Adrian answered before the first ring finished. Are you home? His voice sounded calm, but underneath it I detected tension. How did you know I would call? Because you are smart enough to recognize that message is not a coincidence. I glanced toward the living room. Someone took a picture of me. I know. The answer stopped me cold. What do you mean you know? A brief silence followed. Because the same photograph was sent to me 6 minutes ago. My heartbeat quickened. Why would someone send it to both of us? That is what I am trying to determine. I moved toward the kitchen and lowered my voice. Adrian, what is happening? The question lingered between us. Outside, a siren echoed somewhere in the distance before fading into the night. Finally he spoke. The watch was never the objective. I closed my eyes. Then what was? You. The word landed heavily. That does not make any sense. I agree. His voice remained measured, which is why I spent the last 2 hours reviewing security footage. I leaned against the counter. Exhaustion washed over me. And the event coordinator who was blamed for the theft did not place the watch in his office. Then who did? Another pause. The footage was altered. I stared at the dark kitchen window. You are saying someone manipulated the cameras? I am saying someone wanted a very specific chain of events to occur tonight. A chill traveled down my spine. The accusation. Yes. The public search. Yes. My mouth went dry. And me? Adrian did not answer immediately. That silence told me everything. For the first time since receiving the photograph, fear began replacing confusion. Not panic. Something colder. More rational. The realization that none of this had happened by accident. Adrian suddenly spoke again. Emily, I need you to answer honestly. Before tonight, have you ever seen the name Victor Hale? The question caught me completely off guard. No. Think carefully. I am. I searched my memory. Nothing. I have never heard that name. Adrian exhaled slowly. Not relief. Concern. Deep concern. That is what I was afraid of. My grip tightened around the phone. Why? The city seemed to hold its breath outside my window. Then Adrian said something that made every hair on my arm stand up. Because Victor Hale owns the company that paid for your mother's medical treatments last year. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The kitchen seemed to tilt around me. That is impossible, I whispered. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Across the room, my mother shifted slightly beneath her blanket, but did not wake. I turned away from her and lowered my voice even further. We paid for those treatments ourselves. Adrian was quiet for a second. Are you certain? I thought about the stacks of bills, the late nights, the extra tutoring sessions, the weekends spent working events instead of resting. Yes. Another pause. Then someone wanted you to believe that. The words settled heavily in my chest. I moved toward the window and looked down at the empty street below. Rain reflected the glow of streetlights across the pavement. Everything looked peaceful, ordinary, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. Who is Victor Hale? I asked. Adrian exhaled slowly. Officially, he is a businessman. And unofficially, a man who rarely does anything without a reason. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. What reason could he possibly have for caring about me? That is the question I have been asking all night. The answer should have comforted me. Instead, it made everything worse. If Adrian Moretti did not understand what was happening, what chance did I have? A notification appeared on my phone. Then another. My stomach dropped. Someone had emailed me. I opened the message cautiously. There was no text, only an attachment. Emily, Adrian asked. What is it? I stared at the screen. My fingers suddenly felt numb. It is a photograph. Of what? I could not answer immediately. The image showed a much younger version of my mother standing beside a smiling man in an expensive suit. They appeared to be attending some kind of charity event. Bright lights, elegant clothing, a different world entirely. But that was not what caught my attention. It was the date stamped in the corner. 28 years ago. 3 years. Before I was born. Emily, Adrian repeated. My mother knows him. Silence filled the line. I zoomed in on the photograph. The man looked younger, but there was no mistaking the face. The name printed beneath the image matched the one Adrian had mentioned. Victor Hale. Send it to me, Adrian said immediately. I forwarded the email. Less than 30 seconds passed before his response came. This changes everything. Fear tightened inside my chest. How? Because Victor Hale claims he has never met your family. I looked back at the photograph. The smile on my mother's face appeared genuine. Familiar. Not the smile of strangers meeting for the first time. The smile of people who knew each other well. My pulse quickened. Then he lied. Yes. Adrian's voice had become very serious. And people do not hide connections for nearly 3 decades unless those connections matter. I stared at the image while questions crashed through my mind. Why had my mother never mentioned him? Why would someone frame me at a gala? Why send photographs? Why now? Before I could ask any of those questions, a soft voice spoke from behind me. Where did you get that picture? I spun around. My mother was awake, and the look on her face told me she recognized Victor Hale immediately. My heart nearly stopped when I saw her expression. Fear. Not confusion. Not surprise. Fear. My mother's eyes remained fixed on the photograph as if she had seen a ghost. The color drained from her face. For a moment, nobody spoke. Even Adrian remained silent on the phone. Mom, I asked softly. She lowered herself onto the couch. Her hands trembled as she stared at the image on my screen. Where did you get this? She whispered again. Someone sent it to me tonight. Her eyes closed. A painful expression crossed her face. One I had never seen before. Emily, Adrian said carefully through the phone. Is your mother there? I put the call on speaker. My mother looked toward the device and immediately recognized the seriousness in his voice. Who is that? She asked. Adrian Moretti. Something flashed across her face. Recognition. Not of him personally, but of the name. I see. Adrian remained calm. Mrs. Carter, I believe your daughter is being targeted because of a connection to Victor Hale. My mother laughed softly. It was not a happy laugh. It sounded exhausted, defeated, like someone who had spent years running from a memory that finally caught up. I always knew this day might come, she said. My stomach tightened. What day? She looked at me, and suddenly she seemed older than I had ever noticed. The day you started asking questions. Rain continued tapping against the windows. The apartment felt impossibly small. Mom, who is Victor Hale? She stared at the photograph for several seconds before answering. A man who once saved my life. The word stunned me. Adrian immediately spoke. Saved your life from what? She shook her head. That part does not matter anymore. It matters now, I said. My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay calm. Everything matters now. My mother looked at me sadly. 28 years ago, Victor Hale was not the man he is today. He was ambitious, brilliant, charismatic. People followed him because they believed he could change their lives. I glanced down at the photograph again. The smile suddenly looked different, more meaningful. Were you friends? I asked. Her silence lasted too long. Mom. She finally nodded. For a while. Adrian did not interrupt. He was listening as carefully as I was. Then something happened, she continued quietly. Something that divided people into sides. Some chose loyalty. Some chose power. I chose to leave. My pulse quickened. Why? My mother looked directly into my eyes. Because I wanted to protect you. The room fell silent. Every sound seemed to disappear except the rain outside. I felt cold all over. Protect me from what? Her answer came barely above a whisper. From becoming important to the wrong people. Before I could respond, another notification appeared on my phone. Then another. 3 messages arrived within seconds. All from different numbers. I opened the first one. It contained only a single sentence. She finally told you, did she not? My blood ran cold. The second message appeared immediately afterward. Tell your mother, I remember the promise she made. I looked toward her. She had gone completely pale. Then the third message arrived. This one included no words at all. Only a photograph taken less than 5 minutes earlier. A photograph of our apartment building. For several seconds, nobody moved. I stared at the photograph of our apartment building while my pulse thundered in my ears. The image had been taken from across the street. Fresh rain glistened on the sidewalk. The timestamp showed it was captured only minutes ago. Whoever sent it knew exactly where we lived. My mother covered her mouth with one trembling hand. Adrian's voice cut through the silence. Calm. Controlled. Emily, listen carefully. Are all the doors locked? I looked toward the apartment entrance. Yes. Good. He paused. Stay where you are. Under any other circumstances, I would have argued. That had become something of a pattern between us. But tonight felt different. Tonight I was tired of pretending everything made sense. My mother slowly sat down beside me. For the first time since this began, she looked relieved. Not because she was safe. Because she was finished hiding. I owe you the truth, she said softly. Rain tapped against the glass while I listened. Victor and I made a promise many years ago. If circumstances ever changed, if old secrets resurfaced, he would help protect our family. I frowned. Then why does this feel like a threat? She shook her head. Because someone else wants us to believe it is. Adrian immediately spoke. That matches what I suspected. I glanced at the phone. What do you mean? The messages are designed to create fear. Every move has pushed you toward one conclusion while avoiding direct answers. I thought about the accusation at the gala, the photographs, the anonymous warnings. None of them had actually harmed me. They had only manipulated what I believed. Adrian continued. Someone wanted your attention. A strange realization settled over me. All night I had been reacting, running from one mystery to another. But I had never stopped to ask the most important question. Why now? My phone vibrated again. Another message. This time there was no photograph. No threat. Just an address in Manhattan and a single sentence beneath it. The truth belongs to those willing to see it. My mother stared at the screen. Then something unexpected happened. She smiled. A small, sad smile. I know that address. Adrian was silent. You do? I asked. She nodded. It is the building where I first met Victor Hale. The room grew quiet. Then Adrian laughed softly. Not mockingly. Almost with admiration. We have all been looking in the wrong direction. What does that mean? I asked. It means whoever orchestrated this expected fear to control the story. His voice grew warmer. Instead, they gave us answers. I looked out the window. The rain was finally beginning to stop. Clouds drifted apart above Brooklyn, revealing faint city lights beyond. For the first time all night, the knot in my chest loosened. I thought about the gala, about the accusation, about the humiliation that had felt unbearable only hours earlier. If none of it had happened, I never would have discovered the truth. I never would have understood my mother's past. And I never would have met the man who now refused to let me face it alone. Emily, Adrian said. Yes. A brief pause followed. The next decision is yours. I smiled despite myself. Everyone else seemed determined to control my future. Yet somehow the most powerful man I had ever met was the only one reminding me that the choice belonged to me. I looked at the address one final time, then at my mother, then at the rain-washed city beyond the window. The night had begun with a room full of people freezing in shock. It ended with something far more important. For the first time, I was no longer afraid.